Good afternoon. On behalf of the Ocean Pines Public Relations and Marketing Department, welcome to our history panel discussion. My name is Julie Malinowski. I'm the marketing coordinator for the association, and our director of public relations and marketing, Josh Davis, is over there. He's running the video equipment today, and he's being assisted by Kyle Jarman. He's doing sound for us. Kyle works for the Recreation and Parks Department. But one of the main reasons we're here today in order to have this great discussion, but we want to be able to preserve this. And so today's conversation will become a part of the Ocean Pines Academy. And if you're not familiar with the Ocean Pines Academy, it's a virtual, self-paced civic education course. It's available online at oceanpines.org, and it has all sorts of information about the association, from amenities and departments to budgeting information, financial information, and the board of directors. And there is a section on Ocean Pines history. So today's conversation will be a part of that. We've already sort of jump-started the history section a little bit. Earlier this spring, we recorded a conversation between Marlene Ott and John Talbot, two longtime Ocean Pines members who have been here since the very beginning. So this will become a part of that. The discussion today is being moderated by Jenny Crawford-Rhines right here, and I'm going to let her introduce our panelists today. But Jenny served as the 50th anniversary chair. She served as chair of the Communications Advisory Committee. She's just volunteered in so many ways. She's, I know, really passionate about Ocean Pines and especially about Ocean Pines history. So we're looking forward to a really lively discussion today and some good stories. And thank you all for coming. And I'm going to turn it over to Jenny.
Well, thank you. Thanks everybody for coming, and thank you all for participating. I'm going to introduce each of you and tell you a little bit about at least what I know in terms of, about you, and then we'll open it up. I hope that we're going to have just a flowing, organic conversation. I think that's how it'll end up going. Yeah. But if you all have questions, we'll save them. And if they were relevant, just come on up and let us know you'd like to ask a question and who you'd like to ask, and we'll go from there. First, starting at this end is Jack Barnes. And Jack came from Pennsylvania, but his folks purchased their property in 1968, I believe. That's and correct. Then do you want to talk about, we'll introduce everyone, then we'll go. But so his folks had an opportunity to either buy a waterfront lot or two wooded lots, and they decided to buy two wooded lots for the safety of the grandchildren. And Jack now lives in that home, and Jack happens to be my neighbor, and we've been neighbors for a long time.
That's true.
That is very true, because I moved one street over, get my mail in the same place, and still neighbors. So that's fortunate, and one of the neat things about Ocean Pines is our great neighbors.
Thanks.
This is Alto Weiss. And Alta also came here in 1968. She lives on Sandy Hook Road, and her home backs up to Bainbridge Park. One thing that's interesting, and I hope we get into talking about it a little bit, but it sounds like both of you, as you were waiting to build homes, stayed in Whitehorse Park Campground. So I hope we talk a little bit about, so let's remember to talk about that campground a little bit, because we do have some pictures, but they're few and far between. So that's something I'm very curious about. And this is Gloria Richards, and Gloria also in 1968, and Gloria's husband was one of the original salespeople, and stayed in Whitehorse Park here. It sounds like
until our house was built.
Until your house was built. And then the other really interesting thing that I noticed in your bio is that you stayed in a home on the Parkway, and I'm assuming it's that one down there on the canal that had fire.
That burned down.
It burned down.
The boyhouse.
Yeah. So next is Sharon O'Hare, and Sharon has been here since 75. And Dan, her son was the first child born in Ocean Pines, and they lived right behind on Crow's Nest. I grew up with her son too, so both sons.
Partners in crime, yes.
Yes, and actually right across the way. So, Sharon, you've been in real estate here since when?
79.
79. So, and you served on the board here in Ocean Pines. You have a really special granddaughter, 6 3/4.
Yes, she's coming.
Yeah, she's got. I figured that must be what's happening here. Sharon chaired the 35th anniversary committee, and she is also the founding member of the Worcester County Veterans Memorial. So that's a really special thing that I think we'll get into talking about a little bit as well. And then we have Ed Moran. And
Don't say
Ed,
it that way.
well, I think you bring a really interesting angle to it. It's different because you're coming from a little bit of a business perspective. He helped negotiate the turning over of Maryland Marine Utilities to Worcester County and then some of the land coming back into possession of Ocean Pines. So I think that will be very interesting for us to talk about also. I guess from here, let's start with the campground because I seem fascinated with that. I know both of you mentioned it, so tell us a little bit about coming here and what that was all about.
Well, when we were young and bearing children and et cetera, Lori and I and several others stayed at White Horse Campground because nothing was built at that time. And coincidentally, I had a friend who was a high school friend who was in the laundry and dry cleaning business. And he said, Alto, how would you like to operate a little coin laundry in the convenience center? It was that had been built for show, in the park. And it had
building in the middle.
the old building that used to be Pioneer Crafts.
Pioneer Crafts. Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, we had 4 washers and 3 dryers, a vending machine, and bathrooms on either side, which still existed. Laundry left. But we had that, and then when the new campground came into being across, the way, and this was no longer a campground where you could have trailers and tents, we moved our equipment over there and stayed with it a few years and then just gave it up. It was just sort of a side thing for us. But we enjoyed being there in the campground. We met many people, and it was a good place to have fun. And what were you going to say? Huh? Yeah, the kids enjoyed it too. We were in the baby stage. When we first came to Ocean Pines in '68, we came with my parents who saw an ad and decided to come, went to a dinner. They had dinners in Salisbury, they had things in Ocean City, any way to get people here. And we came with them and we said, oh, don't buy here. The next year, we sheepishly told them we bought a lot in Ocean Pines. And we were the first house on the left on Sandy Hook Road for several years. It was a dirt road when we went into our house, when we lived in our house. And the only other house on Sandy Hook Road was on the right-hand side, and they built just a few months before us. And I remember Edie Brennan. She would ride down in her convertible because there weren't that many houses to show. And she'd put her hand out and she'd be talking about, look at this house, blah, blah, blah. So that was a fun thing. But we had a lot of good times in the campground.
We came to the campground simply because the sales people had to work here on the weekends, and then they worked in Baltimore or Washington during the week, setting up appointments for people to come down. So we had a place in Ocean City as well. So we came here from the Midwest from another Boise project, Lakes of the Four Seasons, and that sold out. And so the options were come to Ocean Pines or go to Lake of the Woods in Virginia, or there was another place up in Connecticut. So we came here, and so we moved into Towson, and then we had a place in Ocean City. And so we would go back and forth. And finally we decided, because our son was getting to be school age, that we needed to enroll him in school, either in the Towson area or moving down here and living here full time and enrolling him here. So that's what we chose to do. But our leases were up, and my husband bought a camper from one of his clients. And so we camped over here in Whitehorse Park. And I know a lot of people don't realize this whole place, the whole area was completely filled with campers. And tents and everything else there, and then the facilities that Alta had provided. So it was a different kind of procedure. But then, as it turns out, we decided to rent because our son was going to school to Buckingham Elementary for kindergarten. And there were 13 houses here at that time. And there were two families that I know of that lived here full time. We have a lot of people that owned and came every weekend, but the people that lived here full time were the Barnettses, and they lived over on Crow's Nest, right where you were. And they were a retired military Navy. And I would have coffee with Mrs. Barnett's periodically. And then there was another family up, I think, around Grandport, near the Swim and Racket Club. And those were the Melsicks. And they had one boy who was older, I think, who had educational issues, but we didn't see them very much. But the campground was like the place to live before we actually rented a place. And the Boyds here on Ocean Parkway, the house that burned down, was the house that we rented for a year until our house in Bay Colony was built.
Now, are you still in the house in Bay Colony?
No, about 15 years ago, moved to the park.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still in your house on
Yes.
Studio? Okay.
Jenny, can we ask a question?
Absolutely.
When did the campground close?
That I don't know.
I've never, from what I understand, the campground was there because people couldn't build their homes because there wasn't
that's right.
water and sewer
Yes.
and the streets weren't in, so they
The
couldn't
roads
build.
weren't-
So they
roads
had the
weren't.
right to use the campground until they could
Yeah.
build their home.
Yeah.
But I don't know when it closed. And I moved here in 75, there was no campground. So I don't know when it closed.
72 or 74, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I've got a history of Ocean Pines over there. I can check.
I was going to say, I
Yeah,
almost
okay.
brought mine with me, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't
I figured
expect
somebody would know.
No.
You will
yeah.
see today in the declarations of restrictions, Joe, I think that's where it is, no trailers allowed on any lot. And that was why you had the campground, because Boise did not want to have their salespeople go out with prospective clients and see trailers on a lot sitting there. It didn't look real good.
Yeah.
So that's why, if you ever wonder where that came from, it came from those days. And the other thing, it's kind of more recent relating to that. My kids kind of grew up coming down here since we were, the house was built in 72. And to get down to the boat ramp, there's a road out here, if you notice, goes where the farmer's market goes right down to the boat ramp.
Yeah.
And that's how you accessed it in those days. Well, I don't know, it's about 8-9 years ago. My son was visiting and wanted to take the boat out. And he did, and he comes home and he says, I got stopped by the police. I said, why did you get stopped by the police? He said, I was taking my boat down the road where we always take it. I don't know why he did that.
Not anymore.
No, that's why it says no vehicles sign on that road. But he said, how am I supposed to know? We always took our boat down.
So, do you remember when in 1972 was the campground
You know, I don't remember.
years? We didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
You want-
it was because we were living there before we got into our house.
Yeah.
And at least during the summer.
Yeah. We had to have a home installed.
But we had problems with our builder. And it was a long process, and we're here in Hampton before our house was built. And so we spent at least 3, if not 4 summers
At the
in
camp.
campground. And we bought 17 used camper.
As-
And 2 kids. It was very cozy.
Yes, yes. Just as a camping offsite, being a city slicker, had never owned a camper and done any camping, anything like that. We had the camper up here right on the corner, and we decided we were going to get one of those screen porches. We were going to attach it outside, and we could sit outside of the box. Well, not knowing really, they helped connect it at the top of the camper, and then the rest of it was kind of attached to some sides. Well, one morning we woke up and it had poured the night before, and the whole canopy had filled with water and collapsed the whole room. And we were stuck in the camper because it collapsed over the door and we couldn't get out. And so we were rolling down windows yelling, "Help, help." And other campers came and managed to. That was one of our fondest memories of the campground.
So at that point in time, the roads were dirt.
Oh, everything was dirt.
Everything was dirt.
Oh,
I
everything
seem
was
to
dirt.
remember, and maybe we were doing something similar to this, but you had mentioned that they used to go spray the roads.
Oh, they had regular trucks that went up and down Ocean Parkway, all of them, just to keep the dust down. Yeah. Mhm.
So you bought your lots in 68.
No, we bought ours in the probably when we got here around 70.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, was the water, sewer, and everything people were building? Because obviously you got your.
Well, we had looked for a different lot, but there was no water and sewer out there yet. And so Bay Colony, that's where we built our home. Bay Colony had water and sewer already. So that's why we chose.
Do you remember the order? I mean, I know section 1 didn't make sense that section 1 would have reversed, but did they go numerically?
Section 2 came, but I think they wanted Bay Colony because it was attractive, because it had all the nice canals.
And
You
had,
know.
Or the canal stuff?
they were building them because my
Yeah.
kids had forts and things around there. And one of the engineers, his dog was called Inky, and he would jump off the platform into the canal. The big entertainment.
It's too far away. I'm sitting back so they can see each
No,
other.
anyway, so.
We would go out on Teal Bay while it was being built by putting the bulkheads, filling it, but you can't do it anymore. Teal Bay is a lot of fill area. And the guys who did the pilings would throw away some of their creosoted logs, big bulky things. And Fred and I would take a little thing over to get them, little carrier, and bring them back, and they made a nice lining on our driveway. So,
Mine are
Probably
in the
last-
front, still stolen from Turns Landing.
see,
Where are my
somebody, I
piles?
mean, they were gonna throw them away.
I'll go back, bring back to the real old days. Kind of picture July in the late 60s, like specifically 1968. My family would visit down here because down the shore in Hancock, Virginia, we had family. And my parents would stay in Ocean City. And there was one point where my parents and my aunt and uncle, who were in the hospitality business, we're going to look at the Gateway Hotel. If any of you remember that, it was right next to the beach club. And it was for sale in those days for $1 million, I guess. And Andrea, my wife, and I were going to run it, supposedly, until Andrea decided, I don't think we want to raise our children in a restaurant, hotel type business. But on the way out of the Gateway, there was a big sign at the exit, and it said, "See the new Boise Cascade development, Ocean Pines." And Boise Cascade was many of you I'm sure know, was a wood production company. A lot of these big paper companies started these developments back in those days so they could sell their product. And that was Boise, and if I remember correctly, they were one of the few that actually were successful in that. So Andrea, myself, and the 2-year-old followed my parents over to Ocean Pines. And when you come into Northgate and a couple streets to the right, there was a sales office there. We still debate if that was the first structure in Ocean Pines, actual structure, because it was apparently a modular home. And we followed my parents around with the salesperson, and Andrea and I are looking at each other as we were at the yacht club, and there was the sign, future home of the yacht club. Salesman's telling us about the major highway that's going to go right through Ocean Pines, and every time we hear one of these things, we kind of roll our eyes up in the air. Sure, okay, that's true. And as I think Jim mentioned, my dad more was looking at, can we buy one lot on the water, which was in those days about $8,000, or 2 lots in the woods, which were $40-some a piece, and they all varied a little bit. One thing that always amazed me about Boise, if there was an extra tree was a little tiny bit bigger. Anything you could see different that might be an advantage, they had their lot priced a little higher. Always thought, well, they're good business people. We did end up mainly, I guess, partly because two things I really think. My mother's worried about the kids falling in the canal. We only had one child then, but she's thinking ahead. She's a 2-year-old. And the funny story about that, we were up in a wooded lot with a salesperson and my 2-year-old Jack, who's now a pilot with Southwest Airlines, so the firstborn does everything right. He is acting up in that lot. And my wife says, let's get him SWAT. That's embarrassing. It's not SWAT. We lived in Philly at the time. And when we were done, we drove the 3 hours back home. And his child is still, acting up. Just changes his diapers. And there's a frog. Yeah, we still hear that story about the frog.
You can't make that stuff up.
No.
And Sharon probably knows more about those days of puffery. When I think that a lot of the puffing, well, you can take that, came true. That we would all these stories.
I think that was, you're right, Jack. Boise Cascade were really good marketing company. And Gloria has been with their company even before they came here. But they came through with everything they said they were going to do. They came through with and they were so smart to buy that oceanfront block. It's worth multi-million dollars now. And they had the foresight to do that. And that's what made Ocean Pines successful from other developments. And I don't know why, Gloria, you chose to come to Ocean Pines, but I know John Talbot said, because the ocean was here. Why not?
Well,
So
Jerry had been a swim coach.
swim coach, yeah.
Okay, and a lifeguard growing up. And so when he had a choice of going to which of the Boise developments, the one by the water.
But yeah, made the
Yes.
sense. And that's what so many people, and having sold real estate for 42 years here, everybody buys Ocean Pines for lots of reasons. But number one is always the ocean's over there. So they were so smart to do that from the beginning. And they said they were going to build a yacht club. They did. They said they were going to build the pools. They did. They said they were going to do whatever and dig the canals.
Dig the
They
canals.
came through with everything they said they were going to do. Brilliant marketers. I have a little short story to tell. I lived in Indiana before I moved here and spent 5 years there. And they had at grocery stores, these ladies will remember, the Ladies' Home Journal magazines or the Family Circle, right always at the checkouts. They were like 15 cents. Well, I bought them because that's all I could afford for fun reading. And inside was a write-up of these beautiful homes in the woods. And I thought, these are so cool. And I ripped them out, put them in my cedar chest for someday when I could afford to build a home. We ended up moving here through a strange set of circumstances, but about 6 months after we moved here, I went through that cedar chest, opened it up, and I'll be darned, it was the homes in Ocean Pines. Now, what is the chance of that happening from Indiana?
That really
But they were doing national marketing, and they were brilliant with their marketing strategy.
But they were
really
also trying to sell their style homes.
Yes.
Because we have Boise models that are still here.
Mhm.
But what
For
happened
sure.
was, I think they were thinking it was just going to be a summer place.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the design was more summer, contemporary, whatever. And then more and more people started coming in and they wanted to use this as a year-round place. And so therefore the housing styles started to change. Yes.
But you're right. The original concept was vacation getaway, and that's what it was meant to. And Jack's comment about the puffery, and it's a word we don't use in real estate anymore, hopefully. But anyway, it happened to me. I stopped at the Northgate, and I was looking at the map because I didn't know where I was going. And a salesman who I know very well now has become a very dear friend, saw me and stopped there. And he says, "Are you lost?" I says, "Uh-huh." And he started talking to me. He says, "Well, I want to show you." I says, "I don't have any money. I can't afford to buy." He says, "That's okay. I'll show you." So he started showing me around. And then they do the trick with the radios.
Yes.
So, okay, they've got a client in their car. So now they radio one of the other salespeople and say, "Is property at 123, whatever lot section number is still available?" And they go, "Oh, I don't know. We got a really good buyer here right now. They're just about ready to sign something." Or they would send another car there with the salesman with the family, quote, a family, who's also interested in that lot. They had to use these techniques because they had 8,000 lots to sell. And how were they going to do this unless they use these techniques? So it was very successful. Obviously, they did well. And I think it wasn't until 1979 when they did the auction of the remaining lots.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
a good segue. Ed, is
Yeah.
that around the time, or is that?
That's a little prior to my time, but listening to this, let me give you sort of a prequel and a sequel.
Okay.
I came here in 1985. I had just left Chase. They hired me back because Chase had bought 3 failed S&Ls here in Maryland, Merit Saving and Loan being the largest, I guess. And Merit, either directly or through loans, owned Maryland Marine Utilities, the water and sewer company. They owned, either directly or indirectly, 800 acres of land here. And they owned half-built condominiums over on the beach, Kings Grant, here in Harbor, and the trailer park over there, Montego Bay. So I just left Chase, and literally at my going away party, they asked me if I would come here and work on this. I left Chase in August '85. I was here in November. Chase picked all this up. We called it Trick or Treat Halloween Day. It was, I believe it was either October 30th or 31st, 1985. So I was here in November. Soon after I got here, I was responsible for all this. And you can all attest to how dark it was at night. There were very few houses. This was 1985. But there were those signboards that are still there. And I came back from Lord knows where, having dinner one night, and it was dark, and I drove around, and I passed the signboard. And I drove further on, I guess by the firehouse, and I turned right around, came back again, and stopped and put my headlights on the signboard because it said, Ed Moran will be the guest speaker at the CCOP, Concerned Citizens of Ocean Pines meeting next Monday. Well, that was news to me. But, you know, I'm a get along, go along kind of guy, so I was there. And one of the first things I said to them, you're tremendously lucky, blessed bunch of individuals, because not long before I came here, I worked on a failed development down in what was called Rotunda, still is called Rotunda, on the west coast of Florida. And this was the classic white patent leather belts, shirts open down to here, chains. I see that there was at one time there was a plane here that I guess were
Yes.
carrying around the marks, I'm sorry, the customer. Well, I was working for Chase, and we were lending money to this company called Kavanaugh's Communities Corporation in a very tight leash. And then one day, we didn't realize it, but they had bought a jet airplane from United Airlines to fly the customers down to there. And eventually it failed, and it failed badly. It was definitely a $10 down, $10 a week kind of operation. And they were taking all the money that they were getting, and they really were paying the salesman. Because up front, commissions went out. They had very little left to put into the property. So I said, how fortunate you are to be here. Yeah, okay, you got a water and sewer problem. Yeah, you didn't get last year's Super Bowl because the lights went out. At that time, all of the electrical was in below ground, and was water incursion was a problem. I said, but you should see the place I just came from. Boise has done a very good job here. They made promises, they took their own corporate funds, and they followed through on that. That's the prequel. Sequel. A number of years later, I was involved as sort of trustee of a paper company that it failed. And they had some involvement with Boise Cascade in their paper and wood pulp business. And so I was out in Portland, Oregon, visiting with the Boise people. And I happened to mention that I had been involved in this, and this was a Boise Cascade operation. And the fellow turned to me and very stiffly said, "We don't talk about ocean pines here. We don't talk about any of that land development. Everybody who was involved got fired." It was a sore point with them. They had lost a lot of money here, Lake of the Woods.
Lake of the Woods in Virginia.
Yeah, they had, because they put a lot of corporate money into it, and so that's the sequel. That's the prequel.
Well, I have a question follow-up. When I was doing the 50th anniversary dinner, we were trying to get some information on the boat and trying to see if we can get some of the old people back from Boise. So I called corporate Boise. Nobody knew anything about ocean pines. That's the answer. I didn't know that.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that either. So
Yeah.
apparently we like them more than they like us.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
we do.
The story
Someone
was
should send this video to them, okay?
Right.
the story was that they had hired a bunch of hotshot MBAs to start a new division of the company. They were concerned about their concentration in the paper and wood pulp industry. And so they brought in this group, hired them individually, yes. And so they were the ones who went off in this direction. And it was a very expensive direction for Boise because they were good corporate citizens and they put their own money into it and to fulfill the promises that they had made to the people who bought here. Unlike most of those Florida developers who are selling swampland.
So we're all lucky we live, right?
Yeah. Well, we're lucky they did what they said they were
Yeah.
going to do.
When we first came to Ocean Pines,
First year.
the first year, there was no Northgate. You had to go on the road by the Catholic Church, now Catholic Church, and come in, and there was an old farmhouse. And that's where most of the salespeople hung around. After the Northgate was built, Will Cohill, who was representing Boise, had an office, and it's still there, the house is still there, on the right as you come in, a couple houses down. And Mr. Cohill and a few of us early owners had quite an encounter at one time. When we had our sales call, of course we saw, think of this, there's going to be a swim and racket club or it's being built. Think of this, the beautiful Ocean Pines Beach Club.
None of the canals were.
None of the canals were done, but we were provided with a charter membership to these amenities. And later, as the development grew and the yacht club was started, there was a situation where they said, "Oh, your charter membership isn't good anymore."
It was 30.
You know, it was going to be $30 for a lifetime for the amenities. But somehow, and we agreed to that, but then later, somehow they weaseled
They
out of
said,
it
no.
and said, "No, you can go to the beach club and you can go
Swim
to
and racket.
the swim and
Yeah.
racket, but any of the new stuff, you know, you can only have the $30 in perpetuity if you go to only those two." Well, we gave up. So, but we had an attorney and everything. I mean, you know, there were a few of us that got together, and said, "What are you going to do for us?" And for 2 years, we didn't pay dues and we didn't pay any membership. So we got a little bit out of it, but we enjoy the other things. And when my kids were young, we'd go to the swim and racket club. And the one thing I remember so much is in the corner where you could look at Ocean City, the salespeople would stand up there and they say, "Now you have to visualize this. There's going to be a bridge there, and there's going to be a new road, and you're going to be able to get to Ocean City much faster and get to the beach club." And sure enough, they did it.
I have a question maybe for Sharon. There was a point where you couldn't get in the North Gate, and I don't know, it was because it wasn't built yet, they were doing reconstruction, but if you go down Beecham Road and go right to the boat ramp,
Yeah.
used to enter Ocean Pines, just pretend you're
That's
going
right.
across the water. That was dug out of there eventually. But that was an access at one point to Ocean Pines. Trivia thing, a lot of your friends probably will know. But I don't know quite why that was, but
I remember the gate being there when I moved in 75, and there was a gatekeeper there. I mean, you
Yeah.
couldn't get in or out of Ocean Pines
We
without
used-
knowing somebody, or that you had to call the gate
No.
to say, let Jenny come in, you know.
It was only the
But-
first year that they had a St. Martin's road access, so the new
Okay.
gate was available the next year, I believe, in 69.
That would make sense. I don't know for sure, but it was here in 75 for sure.
we used to have something called the guard wave. You drive in, just like today, you see what the guardhouse is. It was a guard wave. You just drive in the car and you just keep going. And you hesitate and you could get it through without having to stop and give your name and everything.
Living here, there were 13 houses. And there were, as I said, only the 2 other families that lived here year round. Okay, there were other families that came on the weekend and whatever. We had no telephone service because the guardhouse had the telephone and the sales office had the telephone. So my husband, in traveling with the sales force going back and forth, he would call the guardhouse, and then the guards would drive by and say, "He's coming home Friday night around 8." And that was fun. Our only telephone service, our TV service was WBOC, and we did get we got Philadelphia PBS.
We got 3 channels
I was going to say 1647 and 28.
on an aerial. If
Yeah.
you worked at it.
But
Aluminum foil.
yeah. But so it was. So when they would come and tell me about what time he'd be coming in or whatever, so then I gave them cookies periodically. It was very nice of them. They would check and drive around, check the amenities. They would check the roads. We forget how important sometimes that little bit of police protection is for us. Which a lot of communities don't have.
So at that point, was the Swing Racket Club built?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
I think Gloria's comment too is important because there were so few families here. And, it was mentioned that my son was the first child born here. There were other children here, but they weren't born while we were living here. So that was in 76, January 76. But we all knew each other. There were no house numbers or anything like that. So we all know. We went to the Richards home. We would go to the Rhines home. We go to the Barnes home or the Weiss home. You weren't here yet, so anyway. But that's how we knew it. We did not have house numbers or anything along that line. And we started the programs with our children. We did the Easter egg hunts. We did the Valentine's Day parties with the children. I still have some pictures way back there somewhere.
I
Did
just
you bring-
brought
yeah.
one I found in the closet. We actually did play productions, children's play productions.
that's right,
And that was the start of the Ocean Pines Community Players.
yeah.
And they had a children's production, Your Good Man, Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
And my son was Charlie, and Marlene Ott's daughter, Lori, was, who was it?
Snoopy?
Snoopy. Yes. No, Snoopy was,
I've got to just bring back the house numbers and all, when we bought the lot,
you had a lot number.
sign that had the lot number.
And section number, yeah.
section number.
So when we ordered pizza, whenever you could, it was section a lot.
They never find it in here.
Mail was,
Yeah.
that was our address.
Box 2.
Well, we had a box number to start with
numbers,
their
yeah.
address, yeah,
So,
yeah.
We had mailboxes at the end.
Mailbox.
well, that's what
number.
I was going to ask. So they
Yeah.
delivered mail to the houses at that point in time.
No, not that I remember.
So where did you get your mail?
We went to a cluster box.
Right up by the
Yeah.
Everybody
Northgate.
went to the same
No, it was on a
box.
wooden
No, they all
stand
have
with
the- They
mailboxes.
filled a cluster box in each section.
Yeah.
There weren't cluster boxes.
And remember, there was no 7-Eleven.
They were up by the Northgate.
There was no 7-Eleven. There was no McDonald's. There was nothing here.
Just Harry
And-
Wilkerson.
And when they opened, well, where Racetrack Auto is now, they used to have
They had a
vans
grocery store
there,
in there.
and you can get milk and bread there.
Yeah.
And when they opened the 7-Eleven, we thought we had died and gone to heaven and get a Slurpee. I mean, it was a big deal with my family.
Right.
So it was so rare. Nothing was here.
Ed
We shot-
mentioned
we
how
shot-
dark it was back then. We lived in Pittsburgh, and 7-hour trip to come down here. Well, we got this bright idea. We're really going to max out on our vacation, and so we'll leave right after work. So we left after work. We got into Ocean Pines at 2 a.m. in the morning. and somehow I missed the street. And you're talking dark. I mean, the street signs are those were at the time, those brown things. You could hardly see anything. There were very few people. This would be in the early 70s. Wasn't like there was street lights. It was like dark. And it's like, what am I going to do? I realized later, I live on Newport off Windjammer. I realized I had somehow stumbled, I think, into Bay Colony, which is a maze today if you go into Bay Colony, try to get out of it. So we called my parents at home. They weren't real happy with that and said, well, find Windjammer. And that's how we eventually got in. But I mean, this place, it was really dark, not a lot of homes, very few people lived here.
Speaking of that, that's why the Halloween tradition was changed.
Yes.
And because a lot of people have always been upset with that. Why aren't we doing trick or treating here? Because there were so few homes, it was so dark. There was real concerns for the children's health and well-being. And so they decided they would have a party instead. And that has continued over the years, where people bring candy and the kids do the different things that they do for Halloween here. But that was part of the reason because it was so dark.
But with young families, we had to make our own fun. And that's what we did. We organized these different activities, the Halloween party, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, one amenity my wife was glad to see go, if you look at that, has the stables up there. If you saw
Oh,
Yep, the old
Howard
stables.
Hall stables.
We decided, and that, for you that don't remember, it was up,
Where
there's
the
a path
library-
behind the
Where the
library.
library is.
Path goes down there. So we thought it'd be a good idea to take our 2-year-old on a horse ride. And so he's up top, I'm sort of on the side, and my wife is leading the horse down this trail. And we get down to the end, there's a little fence, we turn back. And she's just standing there, and she's looking at me. What's the matter? He's standing on my foot. What? Yes, and she has flip-flops. Okay? So anyway, it wasn't a disaster, but she was not putting her feet in the salt water when we went to the beach after that, I can tell you that. But between that and what's the one on top of the beach club? The goose?
The goose hangs high.
Hangs high. Do you ever hear that? That was, what did they use that for back then?
That was used for parties. That was used for weddings. Yes.
Sales, and
Yeah,
they,
sales.
because I remember John
In the early
saying.
days.
And there used to be a big carved goose, which has disappeared, which was really cool one time. But that's why the name, the goose hangs high.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I got some house questions, sort of thinking I have some knowledge, but we're always not sure. In the early days, down by Seabreeze, when sales were hot and heavy in this place, Tom Maddie, the famous Baltimore Colt,
Yeah.
he was getting in the house selling business and kind of down there by Widow's Watch right on the corner. And I heard from other people that the guard, everybody knew that place because there was parties in there all the time. And his brother, Tom Maddie's brother, apparently lived there. Tom would, I guess, visit on whatever occasion. But, they had all these parties, and from what I heard, they never sold one house out of there. And I was down there not too long ago when I heard this story. And Widow's Watch is, before you get to the Swimming Racket Club, first street to the left, right there on the corner, one of those houses. Well, one of them looks older. And the other one is like, it's perfection. It's like you had a Mr. Perfect house, beautiful looking home. And I stopped there, my bike, and I asked the guy, is that the home next to you that was the Tom Maddie home? And he says, no. He said, it was right here. I said, right here? It couldn't have been this house. This is too nice. And he says, yeah, I tore it down. But that was like, I guess, one of the famous houses here. And then on Newport, where I live, the Morrows had the first White House in Ocean Pines. You could not have a White House in Ocean Pines because it had to, what's the term? What would you
Have
say?
natural colors. It
Yeah.
had to be
Had to be
blend in with nature.
environmentally,
Right.
yeah.
They went to court and won.
Wood siding.
Wood side, yeah, no vinyl siding.
Right.
Shingles, any
Vinyl.
plastic, vinyl, boards or shingles, or anything besides wood. I mean, this was.
Well,
part
this
of
is
Boise
being
County.
Boise, yeah.
They wanted to sell their
Sell.
wood sided houses. And as has been said, most of the original houses were single story, 2 and 3 bedrooms. And they were vacation cottages. I mean, that's the way Boise envisioned it. We had one of the first 2-story houses in the Pines. And that's why we got a lot of attention from the various salespeople when they come over and show people, this is, one of the better houses.
I want to mention Fred and my husband were part of the first volunteer firemen that started the fire department here in Ocean Pines. And there was what started it, there was a fire in Bay Colony. I believe it was the man who ran the golf course, one of the golf course fellas. And they had to bring in tanker trucks from Shawl because we didn't have a fire department. And so they decided they would fund it. And so Fred and Jerry and John King and a whole mess of gentlemen went to University of Maryland, and they said they were the oldest graduating class. Of course, Fred and my husband were the youngest men on there at that time. But that's how we got the fire department here in Ocean Pines. And Fred was,
Boise had bought a red fire engine.
yeah.
And it was just sitting
All
up there
red.
by the Northgate in the shed. And it was for show, originally. And until the fire department was formed, and we went through our training, here locally for, I don't know, back then it was, maybe 16 weeks. And we had it originally over at the Swing Racket Club, then we moved to the basement of the golf club to finish our classes. And that was our original engine. We got to use that finally, but it was there. But again, Boise Cascade had bought it for show originally. See, we got this nice fire engine to take care of you all. But nobody was there to use it until we got trained, and there was only one person in the class, I think, that had any experience in the fire department.
All newbies.
There were about 15 of us, maybe, that took this course. And like Gloria said, a lot of the men were in their 60s, and I was in my late 20s, I think 28, and Gary was right
About the same.
So I was the youngster in the group. And that's how I got started. And we eventually moved down here with the fire engines. Maybe somebody elaborate on that.
Okay.
But one thing I wanted to say is early on, going back to the beginning, it's amazing what Boise Cascade did in the first 1 or 2 years. They went from the first year, everything was conceptual, nothing was built. They had a farmhouse that they worked out of maybe in the Newport area. But the Swim Racket Club was built, but by the second year, canals were there. Swim Racket Club was built, or at least under construction. And I think they might have been working on the golf club house. It's hard to remember all this, but within a year, it just was amazing. Because the first year we went here, there was just too much, you were told what they were gonna do, but it was all on paper. And all you saw was dirt and sand and woods. So the second year was considerably expanded. It's amazing what they did in a short time. And 3 years later, I think they had pretty much had the yacht club. And the beach club was done fairly quickly for sales. And that was very effective.
And
And
the
they
Swim
had
and
a-
Racket Club was important because you've all been there. You've seen that one indentation, the slip that comes in the back near the marina. That was to bring the people over on the paddle wheel. You saw a picture of it over there, the Amy Ross. Bring them over. And there was this is where I need help from realtors again. If you're on Clipper Court, if you go into Swim and Racket Club again, the last street to the left, up in there was a sales office or an engineering office. It's that's on Clipper. I used to think, a lot of people think that was one of the first homes, but that was an engineering office. The sales office, from what I think it was Marty Groff mentioned to me one day, was when you made that last left for the Swim and Racket Club, it was down that street, but it burnt down, he said, at one time, so it's no longer there. So they bring people over from the beach club, where everybody went, of course, that's the big highlight, realtors are showing them, bring them over to the Swim and Racket Club, so they wanted that done in that slip. They had a sales office there, and a little further out, an engineering office. All of the engineering office is someone's home at this point. And the only other thing I can't figure out, the first house in Ocean Pines, I thought, if you know where Newport Drive is on Ocean Parkway, Newport Drive comes out on Ocean Parkway, not too far from the administration building, our house. About heading towards the yacht club, you pass Newport Drive, 3 or 4 houses up, there's one of the round Boise models. Another question, I used to, as a young person, have names for these things. Remember the round ones, you see them with a base? I called that the Jetson House.
That was a
That was a
spaceship.
That was not a
That was
Boise
not a Boise-
design.
that
No,
was not a Boise
no,
house.
that was definitely not a, no, that was a later design, but that's not
And then what
Boise.
about the ones that had the big soffit in them? I call them the restaurants. The
I call
soffit
them
on the
Oh,
side
Pizza
is
Hut.
Pizza Hut
The
ones.
Pizza Hut
Pizza
one.
Hut.
Pizza
That
Hut
is another
ones,
good
yes.
name for them.
Yeah, yes, so we have crazy names for them, yes.
So they
John,
weren't, they
where was
weren't
the
all
first
Boise
house?
models then?
No.
They were
No.
builder
The
models.
Tahoe, the Wayfarer 2, Wayfarer 1, those were names, and John just walked in, so, Riviera. So these were all names of,
Wayfair, Concord.
Yeah.
yeah,
Now,
so
what
they
about
were,
the
but
first house? I thought that the round job on
No.
Ocean Parkway, someone said that was the first house that someone lived in.
no,
No.
no.
Where was the first house then?
Wasn't
It
that
sounds
John
like Leisure
King's?
knows.
Yeah,
Nobody knows.
I saw it. I looked it up after it was posted and everybody was trying to figure out which one it was. And I looked it up by the years and the tax record, what can I use, you know? It's a little house, it looks like a trailer. And it's the second house, if you come out from, off of Windjammer and Ocean Parkway. It's like the third house going towards the yacht club on the right. And it's a little white house. It's been sold a few times, and the year on it seems to be one of the first years I can find in the tax record.
You're heading away from the administration building towards the yacht club, and you pass Windjammer, and it's on the right.
And
few
this
houses
is a
up.
little white house on the right, just a little rancher, looks kind of like a mobile in a way. Yeah.
Marianne, would you mind if we don't come to the mic, we're not going to have good video,
I mean,
audio.
or video.
Well,
It's
anyway,
gonna be
so can you explain now where the first house was? Because I didn't catch it.
Oh, well, she's saying you drive out of here, you go up on Ocean Parkway, you get to Windjammer,
Yeah,
and about 3 or 4 houses up on the right on Ocean Parkway, 3 houses up on the right on Ocean Parkway.
with the green shutters.
Small white.
Yeah, I know that. I know
Yeah,
that
yeah,
house. I walked by.
right.
Okay.
Now, we had a question, and John Talbot, who goes back forever, I was asking him, where was the first actual structure? Because when we came with my parents in '68 and drove into Northgate and went to the sales office, which was just a street or two to the right,
Excuse me.
I thought it was a trailer.
There wasn't a Northgate.
68.
Oh, okay. It had to be later then. But we're still on the the first structure. I thought that structure in there was a construction trailer, but I think, John, you said no, it wasn't, that actually was a modular home put there for sales.
I believe so. The first home, to my knowledge,
Wait, you
John,
gotta get-
John, come to the microphone, because they can't hear
I
you.
get you up there one way or another.
Sorry, John.
Arlene, are you here?
Yes, in the back.
According to.
Get to the microphone.
John.
This mic, yeah.
Keep coming, John, keep coming. Keep coming, turn it around. like-
Turn around, yeah, there you go.
I think, per Marlene and myself, the first home that we were informed of and actually lived through was Floretta Fear's house on Frigate Run, which is off of Windjammer. That supposedly was the very first structure that was completed. And then after that, there was John King, right? And some others. But and the point was well made that the gentleman said there was no north gate entrance until later, because what we had to do, as my fellow sales aides, we had to go down Beecham Road, which is really Beauchamp Road, but pronounced Beecham because a family by the name of Beecham lived off of that road. Therefore, there you have the term Beecham Road. And that we had to go all the way down and cut in, and that's when they started putting in the canals, et cetera.
Thanks, John.
We also had, with Beecham Road is the only area that when the children finally got to go to school, they would not allow school buses in here because the roads weren't completed yet and so we every morning had to drive our kids to what they called the truck entrance or Beecham Road for the bus to pick them up. But to go to Buckingham School in Berlin, which was 10, 15 minutes away for 8:30 school, we had to have the children there at 7 o'clock in the morning. So it got to be ridiculous. So almost all of us that lived here drove our kids, or we started a carpool. Now, those of us that went to public school, because we had some families that sent their children to Worcester Prep, and we had some also that sent them to St. Francis in Salisbury. So, yeah, so.
And Gloria led the fight to get the buses in here. I remember.
Well, we had a right. We kept on asking them we
Yeah.
can't to, but they wouldn't put them in because the roads weren't approved yet.
And I remember one thing, when the fire department wanted to join the fire association for the county, there was some sort of hearing at the courthouse. And we were sitting in an anteroom, and I overheard another fireman from another company say, "We sure don't like these foreigners coming in here." I won't forget that. We were foreigners to them.
Yeah.
So
You were from
it was-
Salisbury, weren't you?
Yeah, but this was a big thing, to have this huge community here.
You should have tried to come in here in 1985, representing Chase Bank. You talk about being called a foreigner. There were times I would have settled for that.
But Ed, you did some things for Ocean Pines.
Yeah.
Was it tied into the sewer system? Really were beneficial. Tell us about that.
You got an hour or two? Yeah, when I came here, the water and sewer, the sewer plant had a capacity of 500,000 gallons, and it was maxed out. There were no building permits issued at that point. There were people holding permits that couldn't build. And I basically set up shop two places. There was a double wide trailer down where the tennis courts are, a little bit further down. That was their office, Maryland Marine Utilities. And I took a house that Chase owned on Brandywine, used that as a place I lived during the week, and used it as sort of secondary office. But I would start getting phone calls from people who had sold their houses in Baltimore, wherever, and had come down here fully expecting that they could build a house. And they couldn't, and they were living in motels. And there were tears. And so I was blessed by the fact that the people who worked at MMU had worked there probably from the beginning. And I started talking to them, asking them corporate history, that kind of thing. And I was told that there had been a set of plans that Transcontinental, who had bought MMU and then I think had borrowed a lot of money from Merit Savings. Transcontinental had paid to have plans drawn up by an engineering company in Baltimore. And so I went and I visited with them. And my recollection is that they were owed $168,000 for the plans. They had never been paid. So I convinced Chase to put up the money. And so we essentially bought the plans and went to the state and the county to get the necessary permission to build. And despite the fact that I was getting beat over the head pretty regularly by the county and the state to do something, when it came time to do something, it took forever to get them to approve what I wanted to do. So we finally did start the build out of the plant from 500,000 to 1 million gallons. And in the meantime, again, talking to my operations guys, that time they were my operations guys. Tell you a funny story next time around. But they said, you know, these individual pumping stations have, their pumps are water cooled. And so they use water themselves, which puts an impact on the wastewater treatment plant. If you could find the money to replace those water-driven pumps with oil-driven pumps, it would reduce the amount of flow to the, back I went to Chase. And I got them to put up some money in. We gradually started replacing the pumps and gradually started lift. I won't say lift the moratorium, but we were able to convince the county and the state to allow us to approve certain permits, the backlog. And we started working through the backlog as we finished the expansion. I think by the time the expansion was finished, I had sold MMU to the county. And so I think that was finished at that time. But there's what happened there from November of 85 when I got here to 87, 88 was a time of great turmoil, but great progress, both in the sale of MMU to the county, which everybody around here except me wanted to do, and also in working through what was called a second turnover agreement. Chase, as part of the acquisition, ended up with 800 acres in Ocean Pine, and with certain built-in zoning and density. And so there was really about 2 years worth of negotiation between myself, representing Chase, and the boards, the various boards that transitioned during that time, to work out a second agreement, which I'll go into a little bit later. I don't want to hog this entire conversation, but it gave a lot, and it was tied into the sale of MMU. It gave a lot to the association in terms of some of the things you see around here now. And in return, Chase got certain things too. It was described at the time as a win-win situation. The board was very happy. Tim Stoner was the manager here at that time. And to my mind, he did an exceptionally good job. And so everybody, the county, the state, and people here in Ocean Pines and Chase, very happy with the result. People have picked away at it since then, but they were very happy.
And I'd like to ask you a question. The newer developments, the Turns, not the Turns Landing, the, well, I guess Turns was probably part of it, and Wood Duck, and the Maryland, the Marina Village and Colonial Village Park, were these all part of the property that was owned by Chase at that time?
Some yes, some no.
Okay.
Turns was owned by, I think, Marvin.
I know Marvin bought it, but I don't know who he bought it
No,
from.
Marvin, when I came here and first met Marvin, I remarked as to how parts of his area, Wood Duck, I guess this was Wood Duck, and Solgar had.
Solgar had Turns,
Solgar had Turns.
but Marvin had Wood Duck 1 and 2.
Yeah,
And I don't know who had Pindale, but
no, but I said to Marvin, that's strange. You've got foundations with stairs going nowhere. What are you doing? And he said, well, I tell you, boy, all I'm doing is just holding that land and holding those temporary permits until you guys give me some water and sewer. And that's what Marvin was doing. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think Colonial Village was probably part of the Chase property.
that was Balfour bought that.
Well, we sold it to
Balfour, right.
Yeah.
So they bought it from Chase.
Mhm.
Okay.
15A, 15B is now the sanctuary, which is where I live, was Chase, and the Point was Chase, and that was all just woodlands.
Park.
Interlinks, yes.
Interlinks in the park, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there was a lot of
I know, I
really
think
very
most-
valuable land.
Most of those developments started, Marlene's back there, I hear her. So
Yes.
95-ish is when they started a lot of these developments.
Yeah, by that time I had left, Chase decided in its wisdom that I didn't have enough development experience.
Oh,
So they hired a couple of other New Yorkers to come down here and to help me. I put up with their help for about 9 months and decided that there were other things I wanted to do and other places I wanted to go. So
Do you know, another trivia question for this group that they can take to the bar. The only business in Ocean Pines is Marvin Steen.
Correct.
I'll make Joe Reynolds get up here and tell why shortly. But do you know why that happened? That's the only business. There used to be the realtor at the Northgate, right?
He never
And-
turned over that
that
section of
house.
Ocean Pond.
He bought the land, and he bought our section.
Well, he made a deal. How about Joe? I'm gonna press on you. Didn't he make a deal with Ocean Pines?
yeah,
Oh, okay. You don't want to let that out.
very
Yeah.
good answer, Joe.
I mean, he's very astute businessman. I didn't look at anything negative. He's very astute, and he made a trade, and
he had to bring the bulkheads up to standard, and he had to do some other things before I think Ocean Pines would take responsibility for it. That's my memory.
You've got somebody who wants to speak, and she's going to use the microphone, which is great.
You talked about the Northgate Bridge at once when that was built, that was the only way in. When did the South Gate come into existence?
Yeah, it was there when I was here in 75, because it went all the way around. But I don't, as far as I know, it was all, John, maybe you know.
I believe the early 70s.
Early 70s, John said, okay. So it was here in 75. It was County Road, yeah.
Franklin Creek.
Because there's homes down there, so, yeah. That was always here, I think.
I'd like to make some comments about.
Good.
I've been running my mouth without this. Okay, I'm Fred Weiss. I'm Alto Weiss's husband. And as she says, we've been here since the roads were dirt. Living in the park, had a laundromat, had vending machines over at the stables as well as here at the where the laundromat was. But I wanted to point out, go back to some of the problems we had in Ocean Pines here with the county. You might wonder why Shell School is named Shell, and why Shell Park across from Shell School is Shell. And you go over to Shell, and about the only thing that you can find that really identifies Shell is the fire department. At one time, they had a poultry plant, and that was sort of the heart blood of the Shell community. You go over there now, you'd have trouble figuring out where Shell is. But because we were the new guys on the block, the foreigners, as the county commissioners and other local people referred to us, they didn't want us to have any part of the county, and we could not dip our toes into anything dealing with the county. The fire department, there's a fire association of all the different fire departments in the county, and I don't think we got into that until, say, the mid '80s, maybe. But it was a struggle. Getting the roads covered and getting cooperation was very difficult. So we here in Ocean Pines itself were ruled by Boise Cascade for the first 10, 12 years. Their guy on their manager here, or whatever you want to call him, I think was here till around 80, and he controlled pretty much what went on in Ocean Pines. We didn't have local control, so to speak. When we did have a board of directors, Boise Cascade had all the votes. They had votes on every bit of property that they had for sale. So they controlled that even when Will Cohill stepped down from the board. But I remember I was the first person on the fire department board representing the fire department with another gentleman, but it was still a Boise Cascade controlled board. So those of you that are here now, you think everything's fine. We had didn't get representatives on the county commissioners. I believe it was probably into the 90s or early 2000s. So, we were not represented, and when we tried to get things done, we always butted heads. So it's always been for us original people, it's always been a kind of point of contention that like Chow School and Chow Park were not, Ocean Pines, or at least given another name like North Elementary or something like that. But they just sort of stuck us with the knife and twisted it with that. And that's the way things worked around here for many years.
Delegate Hickman at that time was representing Bishopville, which is also and then part of Showell. And when the Showell School proposal came up, he wanted to stop the building of the school. And Mrs. Jones from Buckingham and myself went around. We collected about 500 signatures, both here in Ocean Pines as well as outside of Ocean Pines. And we went to the county commissioners and presented the petitions to them, asking that the school be built. Delegate Hickman did not want the school to be built. He wanted it to stay where it was because people walked to and from school and they had lunch. They had no library. They simply had a bookcase in a hallway. It was a very, very kind of a country school kind of thing. But we went to a meeting where he was there, and some Boise representatives were also with us when we went. And Delegate Hickman was standing there pounding on the table, saying that if this school is built, the children are going to be killed on 113 riding on those buses, that they're going to become drug addicts. He went on and on and on. And my husband leaned over and he said, Gloria, how old are these kids? And I said, this is kindergarten through, it was supposed to be through third grade. And anyway, Shell School, eventually, the county commissioners did approve it, and it was built. But it was built minus one wing. And that was to compensate Delegate Hickman, whatever. So it was missing its art wing, its music wing, and special education. Later on, the school paid for that, unfortunately, because then they ran out of room and they had to add on. And so it's just wonderful to see that it survived. But yes, but the foreigners were definitely here, the attitude, yeah.
Don't I remember, and see County Commissioner Chip Bertino back there?
Yeah.
At one time, you voted for all the commissioners. I forget what that's called.
District-wide.
Thank you, Joe. District-wide. All right. And so we were, I think, pretty powerful force, and I think they realized that. And you remember when that changed?
2002.
2002?
Yeah, it was big. A lot of it had to do with the lawsuit that was brought for a minority district. Sorry,
Yeah.
minority district. I'll shut up. Minority district.
But look what a difference Ocean Pines has made in this county. I mean, to talk about volunteers at the hospital and various activities, it's been phenomenal. And
I have a question that you can answer. Go back to the guardhouse. It's my understanding that when we eliminated the guard, it was because when we had the guard, we were private. And when you're private, you have to maintain and pay for your own roads. And we then worked out a deal with the county, which I don't pretend to remember. But is that really the case why we eliminated the guard from the gatehouse?
I don't.
Joe knows, don't you, Joe?
I thought.
Marlene knows Marlene's coming. I don't know the answer to that.
I knew I'd get Marlene up here.
No, I thought it was because it was too inconvenient because of trucks coming in, trying to check people every time they were coming in. It got to be a backup. And so I understood that eventually had to be eliminated.
Is this
Well,
the
the
final
trucks
word?
had to come in to St. Martin's Lane.
Yeah.
The reason was several of real estate agents realized that we could not get VA financing funding because we were a private community. The VA would not come in here. And we talked to the police department and up the security because they realized that that kind of a gate, which was monitored by Elmer Hastings. But anyway, it was not really keeping people out that were up to no good. So they took the gate guards down at that point in time, and that opened us up for VA financing.
That's something I didn't know. Thank you, Marlene. I appreciate that. Yes, that's correct. Yes, yes.
I mean, before, you have to give our name and people are coming to visit you.
Before you had to give your name and let them know that people were coming to see you and all that. And that was okay when you had, 10 people living in here or even 50. But, it just got too big by the time, I guess, 72 or so turned around, came around.
Can I take a few minutes? I do want to talk about the Veterans Memorial, just simply since this is being recorded for posterity. 2003 was the 35th anniversary of Ocean Pines. And I was the general chair. We had a very successful 3-day event. We raised more money than we spent, which was amazing because the generous donation of people and community, business people, the community. So after the event was over, we were doing a little thank you party for the volunteers. And I said, someone wrote in the newspaper, we need an American flag at the South Gate. I thought that's a great idea. Let's take this excess funds and put it toward this. Can we have a committee to start to do this? So about 12 people raised their hand and they said, great. So we got it together. It is typical in this community when there's a committee, they take the one flagpole to what we really wanted was a memorial. And fortunately, some of the people on this committee, one gentleman, Denny Bowers, was in charge of the 2 memorials in Salisbury, the one by the Shorebirds and the one downtown. So he had experience building memorials and brought the blueprints in. So we looked at what he had and decided what we really wanted was an expansion of his design. And then we went to the board and I think it was Marty Groff and I went to the site. We wanted it somewhere at the pond. And we knew what that little indent was kind of a useless piece of land. They could never build anything there, but what a beautiful spot it would have been for a memorial. So we went to the board of directors, and Dan Sachersky was president at that point, and we asked for permission to put the memorial there. The land would be Ocean Pines land, but the memorial would be maintained in perpetuity by the foundation, which we needed to start. So they gave us their blessing. We broke ground on November 11th, 2004. And that fall a month before that, I had gone to Normandy and took a flag to be flown over Normandy, France in honor. It has to be flown over somebody who has died at Normandy. So we had a member in our committee whose uncle was killed there. So the flag was flown there. We brought it back along with sand from the Normandy beaches and water from the Normandy beaches. So when we did the groundbreaking on November 11th at 2004 was the first ceremony ever held. Of course, there was nothing there but shovels in the ground. But we unfurled this flag that had first flown over Normandy. And every veteran in the audience came in, or the group held this flag. And we have a wonderful picture. It was very, very moving because now we had our first flag at this spot. So then we needed to build this. And we had Bill Rako, we asked him to chair this. He was a local builder and a retired Marine colonel. And he agreed to build the memorial. So through lots of generous donations from people buying bricks and pavers to people donating thousands of dollars and lots of labor from Veterans Day to Memorial Day. We had our memorial, it was built, and we didn't owe 1 penny on it. So since then, we decided we needed a foundation to maintain this memorial. So we have a foundation board of directors. Jenny is now on our board, which I'm pleased to say. And this memorial has decided we did not want to just be bricks and sticks, but we wanted to be a living memorial. And what we realized is that children don't know about what a veteran is. What is the American flag? How do they fold the flag? What's the respect? So we decided we wanted to start an educational program. And perhaps more importantly than the memorial that's there, by the way, it's the one thing in Ocean Pines nobody complains about, which is really good. We wanted to start a living memorial with these children, so we decided to we worked with the county superintendent of schools, got permission. He suggested 5th grade, which is the right age, to bring the students there. So every student of this county comes to the memorial every year, and they get to learn education on how to respect for the flag, the American flag, how to fold the flag. Our Bratzy kids from the high schools all come out and work with the kids on folding the flag. And then they talk to the docents, the grandmothers and grandfathers in the group. And we talk about what is a hero. And first of all, we start with what's a veteran? And what is it different from a veterinarian? And I'm serious, they don't know. So we need to start from the very basics. But it's great. So when these kids leave, they receive a booklet that we have printed, and they have gone through an hours-long training experience. And the foundation pays for the buses, the booklets, and all the other expenses involved with doing this. Besides doing every Memorial Day and every Veterans Day, at 11 o'clock, we will always do a ceremony there. And Memorial Day, we have 4,000 to 5,000 people there. And Veterans Day, probably 1,000 people. And all the expenses are paid for from the donations of this community. It's been an incredible addition to the community. And it's, something we call it the Worcester County because we want it to be all-inclusive. But it's Ocean Pines people in particular that have taken it under wing. So I think we're real proud of the foundation and the memorial that's there. Jenny, have I left anything out? Because you're on the board.
No, I think you covered it.
Yeah.
And the part making it relevant to Ocean Pines history is that the funds were derived from the 30s.
It started from, yes,
Right.
It definitely started from Ocean Pines.
One thing I wanted to, go ahead.
Now he's getting up.
Right? That was good.
Veterans Memorial is kind of dear to my heart. I was never a member of that committee, but I attended a lot of the meetings before it was built to cover it for my forum and in local papers. And I recall that I argued at the time as a non-committee member that it should be called the Ocean Pines Veterans Memorial. And it was decided to be called the Worcester County Veterans Memorial at Ocean Pines for one reason. And Mr. Patino was not on the county commissioners at the time, but the reason it was called Worcester County Veterans Memorial at Ocean Pines because the Veterans Memorial Foundation at that time, or that group, thought that they would get donations from the county. And I believe they did the first year. I don't think the memorial's gotten a donation from the county since then. That's been, 15 years ago?
More than that.
Anyway, good Marvin Steen story. I'm at one of those early meetings, and they say, don't open your mouth because you might get in trouble. I have a bad problem with that. And I said, that flagpole would look great if it had this big bronze thing around the bottom of it. And Sharon said, well, if you think it will look good, why don't you go get the money to do it? So I left there and I'm thinking to myself, oh my, what do I do now? Well, it hit me on the way home. I had the money in 5 minutes. I called Marvin Steen. I said, Marvin, we need to put a bronze plaque around the bottom of the flagpole. Marvin said, well, my boy, you tell him to go buy it and send me the bill. And I said, Marvin, I didn't tell you how much it is. He said, I don't care. Just tell him to send me the bill.
True story. That is true. And just a little footnote. To my knowledge, we first of all, we've been honored by the governor of the state of Maryland for the program we have with the fifth graders. And to the knowledge that we have from the governor, we don't know of any other program in the United States that has done what bringing in the students to this program. One other side note right now is we are doing a movie, about a 15, 20-minute information type movie that we will be showing to the children before they come to the memorial, but it'll also be available for your civic groups like Kiwanis or whatever groups that are interested in seeing it, telling a little bit about the history, how it started, and what's going on. And we just filmed yesterday or Friday we filmed at the memorial with a school group that was there. So it's going to be kind of a neat movie to be able to see, to just explain the whole program too. So, anybody have any questions about the memorial?
How would you tell them that they can buy a brick or a paver?
Yes, bricks and pavers. Good question. This is the commercial part. First of all, the website is opvets.com, VETS, opvets.com. Very easy. On there is a form you can fill out to buy a brick or paver for anybody living or deceased. And we have never raised the price for the bricks and pavers since day one. So it's just a very affordable way to attend it.
It is.
It's changed.org. Thank you, Joe. opvets.org. Thank you. Though .com will get you there, but org is the proper one. You're right. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for the panel? I had one thing I wanted to ask, and I wondered how the addition of Route 90 changed things for you all as residents, and obviously you drive across now, but without going around. But what did it change anything else? Just easier access.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, it saved us time.
Yeah.
But the song's very interesting.
But did it bring more people over, and did things start to develop faster, or did it just everything moved along faster?
Yeah.
It was a big sales,
You know, what's interesting is you listen to this and you hear that initially this was pretty much a, let's say, upper middle income, you go back to 60, 70, second home community. And then there was a time when younger folks realized they could live in somebody else's, what they considered a vacation home, permanently. We brought in a different group, and then of course you end up with turns and whatever. And as my wife likes to say, Ocean Pines has everything from big wheels to wheelchairs. And it really, with all its, drama and issues we hear about sometimes, it's really a great community and a wonderful place to live. And we've certainly enjoyed it. And it's so eclectic, which I think makes it a little hard to govern. It's different than any other type community. And even within it, we have like the park. And the one thing I'm not sure we got answered that I forgot, what was the situation with Balfour when Balfour owned a big section over there where Genova's is in the South Pines? What was that about, the Balfour situation? Ed, are you aware of that?
That was just after my time. I think I left probably just as maybe there were some discussions with Balfour. That area there at one time was Chase property. That was part of the swapping back and forth. And the fact that we own that property gave me a fair amount of leverage in the negotiations with the board, because that had very permissive zoning in that area. have to admit that I did use the expression abattoirs from time to time because it was in the zoning. You could actually build a slaughterhouse there. So that became one of my trading chips.
And de novos in that shopping center is not Ocean Pines. You know that. I think one of our managers tried to incorporate that in Ocean Pines. I forget the reason why it didn't go, Joe, but they were looking to pick up, obviously, the cost, pick up the money from them if they were part of the Pine.
I recall that.
Sure.
Yeah,
Inquiring.
we're gonna have the most.
Yeah, it was a gentleman named Dave Ferguson was the general manager here at the time, and he was a pretty effective general manager, I thought. But his plan was that Macklin Creek Road is owned by the county. And there was something in these agreements, and maybe Ed recalls it, and maybe it's a different story, but something to do with adjoining Ocean Pines roads or something like that, that you could collect an assessment on the property somehow. But anyway, the idea was that the Ocean Pines wanted the county to turn over ownership of Macklin Creek Road to Ocean Pines. And the thought was that Ocean Pines could then collect assessments on those commercial properties up there. And I wrote at the time that if that happened, that they would be building new hotels here along 589 to house all the Philadelphia lawyers that would be coming into town. But you know.
John, I wanted to ask you a question because this came up recently among people that were talking about the development of Macklin Creek. The condominiums that you used to sell right there, right across from there, is that part of Ocean Pines or not? Somebody said they actually pay Ocean Pines dues, and I said I was surprised, but I didn't think that was, and that was my own. Well, that or turn around and just use your big voice.
No.
Oh, for the video. Okay.
I think you're referring to the meadows.
To the meadows, yes.
At one time, there was an investment group, we're going back prior to 2000, and I was a member of the investment group, and I had an opportunity to buy the land, which today is the meadows at Macklin Creek. Those are the gray buildings across from the old drugstore. And I remember I purchased it, but gosh, I can't remember exactly who. It was through the investment group that I was a member of, who had in turn procured the land from whoever.
Okay.
You bought it from.
Yeah, right. I can't quite recall who the original owner of that land was. But then it was like 4 acres, and then we developed the 48 structures, which today is the Macklin Meadows, or the Meadows at Macklin Creek.
But is that part of Ocean Pines?
Oh, yes. It is part of Ocean Pines in that every individual owner, there are 48 owners, must pay the annual OPA dues of $9.96. And therefore, they are members of the association, as you all are, as well as anybody else that owns property.
We were recently talking about that in the dog park.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
South side. Most of you don't know that the what I call the south side, Sherwood Forest, or where the parks is now, didn't exist in the original plans of Boise Cascade. It just went to Macklin Creek Road and the guardhouse there. So that, because sales were going so well here in Ocean Pines, or the original layout, they opened up this other section. I remember I had a dirt bike at the time, and I remember going back there and coming back to Alta, and just in amazement about what was going on over there. I said, "You got to see what's going on over there. It's just they're dirt's moving all over the place." Unfortunately, the recession hit in the I don't know, 70s or 80s, I guess it was 80s, and they ended up auctioning off a bunch of the lots over there. But it was not originally planned as part of Ocean Pines. So just for your knowledge, in case you didn't know that.
In that area is where the stables they used to take the horses through Section 10. I remember that because I used to ride those horses through that area. Yeah. And there was a gatehouse at the South Gate too, because that became the building at the tennis courts now. That was the start of one of their little buildings there.
Didn't there used to be tennis courts by the yacht club?
Yes, and I brought a big photo over there, and it shows the swim and racket club with the tennis courts there, and I think a paddle tennis. I think that's a paddle ball, maybe.
Well, what you were
Yeah.
asking though is the tennis courts near the yacht club. And there were,
Yeah, that's the one.
and
Yeah.
that was a swap, that was part of the
Oh,
swap.
by the yacht club.
Yeah, hard true
Yeah.
courts. Yeah, they were nice.
Right now where Pines Point Marina is and those pink buildings,
Yeah.
that area had a smaller group of tennis courts and a smaller tennis facility than what you see now. Because as part of the swap,
Are you talking about the yacht club or the swim and racket?
no, I'm not, no,
The yacht club.
Yacht club.
Yacht
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do.
yeah, it was right across from the yacht club. And we swapped to get that land, and as part of the deal, we had to build new tennis courts in the tennis center that
Where
there
they
is
are
now. We moved that small building over to the new tennis center and really, I think, doubled the size of it, and built the hard true courts. And at that time, I think probably 4 of the asphalt hard courts. Larry Whitlock, who was our engineer, architectural engineer, he did a very poor job of estimating what that was going to cost. The price was double. It was about $250,000. We expected it to be about $125,000, $150,000. The ones that are the furthest, both, I think, 5 and 6 or whatever, they're way in the back and way on the side. We ran into water problems. I know it's unusual to run into. I can't imagine that anyone could have ever foreseen the fact that we might have had a groundwater problem there. And we had to pump like crazy to get enough solid ground to build those tennis courts there. So it was a double the price, but the deal was the deal. And in return, we got that land, which then was sold to private developers, again, pretty much after I left.
Was Osprey Point, the townhouses part of that land too, or?
I think Osprey Point was part of the Balfour Group.
Okay,
I think.
Yeah, but that was also Chase land.
yeah.
And the swap there was Chase gave more of the land around the Ocean Pines Marina so that more slips could be built and were built. So yeah, that was part of the swap. Just one piece of trivia. I said that I had left, and a lot of the negotiation took place between 2 of my successors. One of them was the father of the White House press secretary, Jim Psaki.
How about that?
Yeah, so I got to learn how to pronounce that name long before the rest of them.
Before it was relevant, right, that's interesting.
Does anyone remember the pirate ship on the way to the yacht club?
Yes.
On the right side.
Yeah,
That was the
our kids
coolest
played 'em.
playground area,
Yeah.
which is now where
was in the
probably
woods.
the townhouse is that I live in. Yeah.
It's in the woods. It's where the
Well-
swamp was.
Yeah. Okay.
Here she comes.
A couple more trivia. One is that the reason why the county didn't want to take over Manklin Creek Road is because at the end, there was somebody that said, we're not selling to Boise Cascade.
Right.
And that was the Hudson family. And that's why that's a public road, because they always have to have access to the Hudson family. Yeah, you can see there, and their relatives have all built back in there and all that kind of stuff. The other thing was that when I heard that when they did section 10, that the natural drainage was to go to the cornfields or the soybean fields toward 589. And the local farmer said, no, you got to reverse the natural drainage. And that's why the ditches in section 10, you can drive a Volkswagen in them because they had to dig them so deep that it would go toward Manklin Creek. And God bless the salesman, John might remember this, but some of the salesmen told people those are canoe lots. You get in a canoe and go to Manklin Creek. Anyway, those are just a couple of little trivia things that you want to get.
Molly, tell them about the gate graveyard.
That's what I was going to say next too.
Okay, and then I became the graveyard expert for Worcester County. There are 2 graveyards in Ocean Pines. One is on Admiral Avenue where the mailboxes are. You'll see there's some steps. And you go up the steps, and just this week I took pictures of the 5 or 6 headstones that are there, the Joneses and several other people. Some of them go back to the early 1900s and some even more than that. But Maryland law says that you always have to give access to any relative into a graveyard. And so that's why it is. It's very quiet neighbors. People don't mind, you know. I think the Eagle Scouts, you know, and the people have all put daffodils and all kinds of things in there. It needs a little bit of repair. But the other one is in the park. It was checked out, and there was never anyone buried there, but the park still has a fenced-in area off of East.
They called it the Indian burial ground.
Yeah, the Indian burial.
And what was so funny is when my grandson was very young, I took him down there because it's fenced and the ground is very uneven. And he said, Grandma, he said, I see the bodies, but where are the heads? Because all he saw was just a...
What about, isn't there a horse farm still down there? Which is the only horse farm in Ocean Pines, right? Down past the graveyard, still there?
There's no horse.
Actually,
I don't know what called a horse farm. Guy had horses.
Cathedge.
Or Cathedge Road is what the road, because Mr. Burbage, or Mrs. Burbage, the Burbages owned where where Peninsula or Tidewater Health is now. But then there's the Mr. Cathell, so they called it Cathedge Road. And he vowed on his father's grave or deathbed that he would never sell that property. So he did. He had emus and giraffes and, you know, all kinds of things back there. I don't think he does it anymore, but that property, that's not part of Ocean Pines, and it does, again, it's a county road. Cathedge Road goes by the Tidewater and then back to the other property that's back there.
Thank you for clearing that.
We're solving lots of mysteries today.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I remember a pig farm.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes.
What's the story on that?
Mr. Klein's Pig Farm.
There was an attorney that wanted to build a small shopping center that I remember my husband talking about. And the county said, no, it is ruled as agricultural. So he decided he would set up the pig farm and make it agricultural to stick it in your eye, you know, that because he couldn't build there. So that pig farm stayed for a number of years.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, the pigs went and nobody took care of it anymore.
And the
But
pigs would get loose periodically and run
Yeah,
through the neighborhood.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
hysterical. Seeing the police officers in Ocean Pines trying to corral them.
yeah.
The fellow who owned Merit Savings and Loan, a fellow by the name of Klein.
Yes, that's the gentleman,
Yeah,
yes.
he was the one, he may not have been the first one, but during my time, he was the one who put pigs on there.
Yeah.
Which I found quite interesting because Jerry Klein was quite a character. And he had in King's Grant, number 1 King's Grant was his personal house there. And he invited me to stay there once or twice, and I did. And the number 1 is just huge. And it has, I won't say a ballroom, but it has a big, large meeting room. And there are statues and pictures of pigs all over the place. He just, and what was unfortunate for Jerry is that looked at him from a certain angle.
No further words need to be said.
He was quite a character. I visited his office in Baltimore once or twice to get papers signed. And he said to me at one point, he said, you know, you and I had been doing business earlier. I might not have been in that position. I might not be in that position I am now. And I thought, well, Jerry, I don't think so. I don't think I'm strong enough to move you around. He was a man on a mission, basically. But the pig farm was a spike farm. That's definitely.
Basically, right.
Yeah.
You know,
You turn out the Northgate, turn to your right. It's
Turn
that
right
vacant
there where
land.
the-
before Beecham Road.
You'll see a for sale sign.
Yeah. It's always been for sale.
About 30 or to 50 feet past that sign, there's an indentation in the woods there. It was cleared out. And that was the pig farm. I mean, it was all still wood, except for where he made the pig.
There was evidence of a structure, a small.
There was a structure that fell
Yeah.
down.
A small
It
sty.
probably had to.
Yeah.
Ocean Pines Pig Farm, yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that.
That's another one. You really can't make that up. I didn't
No,
know
I wish we had
that.
that for your display, the
I
t-shirt.
know. Yeah. Well, there were, when we did a history panel once before, one of the things I never knew was when this was, when the community, was the old community center, and this was when I was a little kid, we used to have the swim team awards things and everything in that room, and Jenny Brexer had the conservatory, now I'm gonna mix, what's the word when you, I always say it's freeze drying animals.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Taxidermy.
Taxidermy. She
Okay.
had all the, so we had the taxidermy owl but so for years, they used the community center with those, taxidermy things.
Yeah, yeah. She wanted to have a nature park or like a nature,
conservatory.
yes.
And so, I
Yeah.
mean, she really did some neat stuff for us.
And she also with the swim area was very, very strong.
Well, she
Yeah.
started at the aquatics.
Yes, and our kids were part of that.
Yeah, and I was too from probably.
What was very interesting, one summer, we had two young girls who were college graduates who were who did water ballet at their college, synchronized swimming. And they came here in our team and they did lessons for the girls. And they called them the Aquilinas. So my
At the
daughter,
sports course.
yes,
In
and
the
so
deep end
my-
under the high dive.
Yes.
I think I might have been there.
didn't me, my daughter.
Because I remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
But that was very nice. It was a volunteer thing they did for 2 summers.
Yeah.
And it was very nice for young girls.
There's, I don't know if you noticed over there, the picture, that was from Susie Cahill. Do you remember
Yes,
her?
Susie K.
Somehow that ended up in my hands during the 50th anniversary of
Okay.
that picture board.
Okay.
That's the.
Well,
I don't know who brought the poster, the Ocean Pines poster. Was that you, Gloria?
by the way, I have
Explain what that was so that people know, because that is just a really special piece.
Well, those are all the logos that Boise Cascade developed for each of the clubs.
And it wasn't it done by a New York artist, I think? I think they're classic. I love them and beautifully done.
When we did the 50th anniversary, Gloria donated, I guess Jerry had saved.
I have more I have a lot of those posters that he had put away. And I'm deciding, I think they should be donated, either the craft club or the Fireman, either way to sell them to raise money. I'll be happy to do it. But I have to talk to someone about that.
You know, you don't make me feel good. It was years ago, Edie Brennan was having an auction. She had one of those.
Yeah,
She wasn't
and
having
she
an
had one.
auction, but she donated that. And at this, I forget who it was to raise money for, but we were there, my wife was there, and she leans over and she says, "I want that." And you don't know my wife. When she says, "I want that," she wants it. $500 later, I have one of those hanging in my kitchen. So,
Wow.
you know,
Fire department.
don't say there's a lot of them around. Doesn't make me feel good.
It's not.
Well, now they're saying $500. I'm thinking, boy, the fire department could make money and tie in their
If I'm right,
Yeah.
correct me, I'm not 100% sure my memory's right on this. Each one of those little things would be on a sign.
Yes.
And directing them toward the golf club. Okay,
This one is, I gave it to Tim McCollum, or Don McCollum, and then the other one, the Golf and Country Club, is also over with John.
so how big were these, Marley?
They're
Enameled?
Yeah.
They were about 2 by 2.
2 by 2.
So I think we should bring them back, Ocean Pines Board of Directors. I think they're great designs. Yeah.
They get them as something. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have time for a funny foreigner kind of story? It's sort of at my expense. When I first got here, Jim Barrett, who some of you knew, and obviously his name is on the medical center over there. Jim, first of all, tried to intimidate me because I was called before the county commissioner's meeting. And I'm sitting there, and Jim Barrett was one of the first to speak after I guess I had given a little presentation on what Chase was planning on doing. And he leaned over and he said, you know, there's a lot of people around here don't want one more house built in Ocean Pines. We think that there's quite enough there. And look, and here's this big guy with a florid face and a Chevrolet pin on his lapel. And I'm thinking, well, it might be the case, Jim, but you're not one of them. And he continued to pitch me after that to buy the utility over dinner one time. And he and another commissioner, whose name I will not reveal, I can talk about Jim because he's no longer with us, over breakfast one time at the places you go into Fager's Halls, I guess was the name of the.
Yeah.
And so the two of them sort of got me in a corner. What would it take to sell the utility to the county? So I laid out what I thought it would, and the two of them looked at each other and thought, we got a deal. So they dragged it and me in front of the next county commissioners meeting and explained the deal. And Ed Hammond, who was the counsel to and who was not someone who hid his light under a bushel. After they explained it, Hammond turned to me and said, okay, Mr. Moran, you're going to sell the utility to the county with that tentative agreement, yeah. He said, are you selling the assets? Are you selling just the physical assets, or are you selling the company? I said, I'm selling the company. We have no interest in the company. So he said, so you're selling the assets and the liabilities? And I said, yes. And he turned to Jim Barrett and the gentleman whose name he turned to the two of them and he said, was that your understanding? And the two of them were like, no, we thought we were just going to buy the assets. So he said, and this is the councilman, and you know, there's people all around. He said, would you two do me a favor? He said, the next time you sit down and negotiate with this city slicker, could you please have somebody else with you? Because he's going to pick your pocket 9 times out of 10. I ended up selling it for just about that, but it was the whole.
It took a long time.
It took a long.
Yeah.
That's what's true. I guess that they were very close to outsiders.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not 100% sure about this too, but at the beginning when they were buying the land, they were buying it under different names and then they conglomerated together.
They thought they were
And said,
getting-
who would want to build in that swamp? And the locals were glad to get rid of it. So, but
And if
not
you read it-
knowing it was going to become this big a group and who was behind it.
Yeah, we had friends who deer hunted all in this area, and they said
Yeah.
it was very swampy.
Yeah. And there used to be farmhouses. I mean,
Yeah.
Marlene mentioned the cemeteries, but there were farmhouses throughout here, and there were times drive down. You see the wisteria still on the golf course. But there were times when you would go by and, see fields of daffodils or lilacs in the springtime. Well, obviously those were planted, so.
But wasn't Ocean Pines originally sort of a getaway for those in Berlin? And there was it Mumfords that had the property?
I don't know if they were some of the property owners, but Tuffy Mumford, someone we could talk about briefly.
Yeah.
Tuffy Mumford was involved with the construction of the roads, not designing them, but the construction. And Tuffy Mumford lived in Berlin, and his family still lives there. But Tuffy was known to be imbibing after work. That's when he went to the yacht club, and that's why it was called Tuffy's Tavern, because Tuffy Mumford would be there every night. And then, of course, the rest of the story is that Tuffy's ghost used to still be in the old yacht club. And that's another story for another time. Okay.
But the old yacht club's gone, so
Oh.
that is the ghost.
The ghost, we're not sure about. Yes. Come on up, John.
Fish like what you just stated, kind of an interesting tidbit of history.
The question came up, I think, Jack, you asked, was the community built to take care of the local people or as per the local people's request? Actually, it was Boise Cascade. They were in the business of developing land. There at one time were 23 developments spread throughout the United States. The two most successful, the queen of the fleet was Ocean Pines. The second most successful was Lake Arrowhead in California. I've been there, a nice big lake. But anyway, they had what was called a land procurement team. They would travel around the United States and designate what they thought would be applicable locations, geographically speaking, being close to a metropolitan area that would draw the people down to buy the product. And that's actually how Ocean Pines came about, from the land procurement team out of Chicago. And they had the draftsman in Chicago lay out the plans, the map, as we know Ocean Pines, with the various street names and all that. It was originated in Chicago. Another interesting tidbit of history is when they first opened up, the first date of sale was the Friday, July the 12th of '68. And I can remember in the contract, which was one page at the time, there was a statement whereby indicating that the community of Ocean Pines, the developer had the prerogative to continue to develop and sell, or also had the prerogative to not continue to sell and rebate all the monies they received up until a certain date. So it was a test period, like about, I don't remember, it was 90 days or 120 days to see whether or not it was going to work out. Because if it didn't work out, they were going to refund all the money from those people that signed up, and there was not going to be a place called Ocean Pines. Or if it looked good, as it did, then they proceeded. But there was a clearly written statement indicating they had the prerogative to end it and refund the money if they felt it was necessary to do so.
John, I want to ask you, if I'm correct, the first buyer was John Howard Burbidge, the mayor of Berlin. Is that correct?
Well, almost correct.
Almost correct.
I'll put it
Correct
this way. On that day, I remember very well, it was a nice sunshiny day. It was Friday the 28th, or Friday the, what did I just say? The 12th of '68. And Bill Gibbs, who was the manager for all the salespeople, introduced John Howard Burbidge, who was the mayor of Berlin, as the first buyer of a lot in Ocean Pines. And it was like a trade where he donated a boat, not the Amy Ross that later came into play, but a boat that was used by the community. But then in talking to Ray Coates, who's a prominent attorney in this geographic area, his dad handled all the settlements in the beginning. And there were actually 2 recorded sales on the 12th day of July that I didn't know about until I read, and you may check it out, you might find it. Had the names of the 2 individuals that bought lots, were recorded the same day. I don't know how they did that. And then later they sold the lots in around 1980s or whatever. But there were 2 sales prior to John Howard Burbidge.
Interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
And the Amy Ross, we didn't talk about that at all, the boat.
Well,
Yeah.
we did a little bit.
Little
We
bit,
talked
yeah.
about the Swing Racket Club and the slip.
The slip,
there.
that's true.
And the paddle boat. Is that something you want to go into? We were kind of over.
We're over at time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine if you all are fine, but whatever is.
It didn't last
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
It
2
didn't.
years or so maybe.
Oh, the Amy Ross. Yeah, no. Well, they got the Route 90 bridge.
Yeah, that was the way to get people here to buy lots.
Yeah. And there was the sales center was in the parking lot of the beach club for quite a period of time, and it got moved. Somebody, Marlene probably remembers where it got
Homes on 113.
Yep, 130.
there. Okay, so it's still around somewhere.
And that's why we still own land that is leased by Secrets, because that's where the takeoff spot was
Yeah.
for the Amy Ross. That's why we still own that land in Ocean City and the Bayside. So,
All right. Well,
I've chatted it.
I'd say that's a wrap.
I want to just thank everyone for coming, and certainly want to thank our panelists and Jenny Cropper-Rhines for moderating and for all the great questions and all of you in the audience who participated. And I know you didn't have a chance to look around some of the things we talked about. I know there's a photo of the pig farm back here at one of the tables.
Yep.
So I know some of the things that you touched upon today. We've got some memorabilia along the side too. But I'm just like,
That book of the first lot sales is pretty neat. If you wanted to look up what the original sale of your own.
yeah, by section, those
Yeah.
are listed there. Marlene donated those. So if you have a chance before you head out today, take a look at some of that. And I want to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you all for coming. I think we need to probably do this again sometime. Thank you.